Recently, conversations about masculinity have been everywhere. From Louis Theroux's Manosphere documentary to the Netflix series Adolescence, these stories are dominating headlines and group chats. And there's something interesting happening at the same time, because as much as people are criticizing these communities, they're still growing. And the Manosphere didn't become popular by accident. It's solving a problem. The question is, what problem? I'm Antoinette, and this is Culture Alchemy. And today I'm joined by Trevor Mayoh, principal consultant at Next Gen Men, a Canadian nonprofit dedicated to changing how the world sees, acts, and thinks about masculinity, to help me answer this question. Trevor, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate being here.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you're here because I really want to dive into this topic, but I want to do it very thoughtfully. And I know that this is absolutely your area of expertise. I know you've worked with lots of young men across the country and across North America. So, for those who may not be familiar with your work, let's kind of set the table before we dive in. So, tell us a little bit about Next Gen Men and how it came about.
Yeah, so Next Gen Men, wow, it's wild when you think about the time. 11 years old, came about when some guys were really struggling with their mental health and how that related to masculinity and gender and all those type of conversations. One with themselves, but then also with some of their family members with suicide in the family. And so they had the conversation about what does this mean and how to come together and how to redefine the conversation around gender masculinity. And then fast forward 11 years later, we're working internationally to redefine what it means to be a man and a boy and redefine that conversation around masculinity and have conversations around mental health and what that looks like and what like feels like to us. And really, it boils down to a future where men and boys feel less pain, but then also cause less harm in the world that we work to each other, to other people, and to ourselves as well. And so an organization now that works with men and boys from school to the locker room, with parents, with coaches, to have that conversation, creating online spaces and innovative spaces to engage in real, meaningful, authentic ways, and then also outside that group as well. So having the conversation in workplaces and more broadly about what masculinity, equity, and mental health looks like for all of us. And so as an organization, it's grown quite rapidly, but this conversation has also changed too in terms of how we looked at engaging men and boys 10 years ago from what the conversation now in 2026 is about what it looks like, what it feels like, and really what is required and what's needed.
A huge mandate, but it's definitely an important one right now. And I'm reminded, I was looking at the website and something really struck me. There was a quote on there about the Papercuts of Patriarchy. And, as you talk about redefining what masculinity means and the work that you're doing, I would love to know, what does that mean? Like, what does it look like in the everyday lives of boys growing up today, the paper cuts of patriarchy?
Yeah, the challenge is when we talk about patriarchy as a system, a lot of people have like a political idea of it or just what we hear in broad. But like, let's boil it down to actually what it really means for a lot of young boys or just young individuals in general. Is we are bound by really strict gender norms and stereotypes of what it means to be a boy. And you think about it like boys don't cry, man up, don't show emotions, be by yourself, the keep it inside, the inability to potentially have those really, really emotional, strong connections with other people without it seen as being breaking the norms, and how we police ourselves and others, right? Not just family or friends, but school, but media, and we get it from so many small places. And so it is, the patriarch, if we boil it back down to the system that really insists and puts that male are dominating, superior in a lot of ways. Everyone's deemed weak. It's this culture of competition and domination for other people. And that really is not just a tax on other people, but it's also really harmful to men and boys too. And so we talk about the paper cuts. Bell Hooks has the quote in terms of the first victim, right, is men and boys, and how we neuter ourselves at the very beginning in terms of the whole total experience. And so it is the showing lack of emotion, not being able to talk about vulnerability or fear. It is that isolation that we feel. It is the fact that we are dealing with a lot of these challenges, but not able to access resources, talk to each other in that way. And so it is a constant when the paper cut is from very real, from very different resources, but the damage is significant. And so when we also think about it a bit more broadly, It's about, instead of us thinking about how are we solving the problem that is men and boys, instead start thinking about how are we actually navigating and challenging the problems that men and boys are facing and the ones that they're engaging with and what that actually means. And so the challenge of the patriarchy is not just about giving something to somebody else and making things more equal for other people and more safe and inclusive for other people. It's also about freeing men and boys from this rigid, harmful, dangerous system that is also quite literally killing them, but is incredibly restrictive and harmful as well.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And even just anecdotally, when I think about the worst thing that we can call boys, men, full stop, actually, in society, a lot of times there are things that are associated with women or associated with, emotion, vulnerability. So you're absolutely right. You can see that.
Feminizing homophobic language. If we think about, the hierarchy around it and the masculine and feminine and how we rate like masculine traits, masculinity higher on that in terms of dominance and assertiveness, and then more traditional like feminine traits, if you will, about like emotion and empathy lower on that. And then what does that say about where we treat women on that scale? And then again, if you can think a lot of young men, the most harmful thing that you can say to someone is emasculating. It is feminizing them. And you throw like a girl, or that's so gay. And it's all about like taking away this, what we view as the most valuable, important thing about us is our relationship with the traditional masculinity. And so the conversation then is not saying, how do we restrict our masculinity or preach this is the type of masculinity you should practice? It's saying, how do we free up masculinity so that it is more, it is infinite in terms of what people want to access and what they want to do and what's really authentic and real for themselves, and less policing into specific boxes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if I go back to this idea about the Manosphere, and particularly the Theroux documentary, which have you seen it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and so you can see some of the rhetoric that a lot of these people in the space are using around this limited idea of what masculine men are like, and I can see that there's definitely a very constricted view of that. And so I'm wondering, who is the most vulnerable to the Manosphere messaging right now?
So I think a lot of us are. And I think the challenge that we have when we think of this, and when I was having a conversation with friends and they were just labeling, like the Manosphere is just engaging problematic XYZ, and like that's engaging with it, instead of recognizing that we're all really at risk of being open to problematic, challenging different spaces online. And one of the main reasons is it is about isolation, and it's about people looking for community, and people really recognizing that there's challenges they're facing that are either unmet or unacknowledged. And in that navigation of the isolation, the feeling, the wanting the emotional connection, the wanting to navigate their own pain points that they have, whether it be insecurities about their future, of what they've been told, and also walking into a story and a journey that's much, much different, more challenging, that the fact that they're struggling with their own mental health and it is being unmet or unacknowledged or unsupported in that way. And all of those things open people up to be able to find, okay, well, where there's problematic people online who exploit those weaknesses and exploit that vulnerability and exploit that isolation. And so the conversation about like, okay, it's not just someone who's sitting online, terminally online all the day. Obviously that is a challenge in terms of where the algorithms are built, but it really is about this isolation, people looking for community, and this unmet need that is met by someone online. And that unmet need could be fear, frustration, anger about something, and someone online tells you it's their fault. It's not because of you. It's not because of this. It's their fault. So it's an easy sort of focal point. But it also can just be like, I'm looking for connection. I'm looking for community. I'm looking for someone that sees me and hears me. And the challenge is it's a walk into that. And I'll give you a quick example. We think about the jump to the Manosphere as being like, from all of a sudden you're online to now you're Andrew Tate's disciple. And instead, the conversation is you find a lot of these guys saying like, hey, like I really want to do better for myself. I believe in fitness. I believe in going out and taking care of my body. I believe in discipline. I believe in like, I really want to be successful in whatever business, sport, whatever thing I'm working on. And there's a lot of really, really great accounts that start off as having that conversation of like, hey, here's a fitness account that you can talk about like great ways to like work out and like different tips and things like that. And it builds the community. And then the challenge is those are pathways matched with isolation and unmet needs. Those are pathways that lead to, okay, you're working out all the time. Great. It's really talking about isolation. It's really talking about other people challenge. And then all of a sudden there's like a little bit of like dribble of misogyny in there. And then but that influencer is great for you. It's telling you really important lessons and things like that. You're finding some really great tidbits from there. And then there's a little bit more homophobia dribbled in. And then there's some other bigotry jumbled in. And so the challenge is it's this slow march. And so it's not just one specific group that's susceptible to it. It's all of us, because all of us are floating in the same online world. All of us are also challenging with sort of navigating these challenges of isolation, of loneliness, of connection, of not being able to really navigate our vulnerabilities in real healthy ways. And so it is a pathway that's open for a lot of us.
Oh, I absolutely see that, because one of the things that really struck me, and this is going to be a kind of a pivot, but I'll bring it back around. So last weekend I just saw Project Hail Mary. And so for those who haven't seen it, movie that's global blockbuster right now, Ryan Gosling, he's alone in space with an alien. But what really struck me is, I think one of the things that I think is really interesting is the fact that we have this man who's alone, who's kind of a loner, who actually starts to connect with someone, with something. And I think personally, one of the reasons why I think it's resonating is because it's not just talking about, about space, and it's talking about connection. It's allowing all people to kind of go and see this person who has been suffering, I think, from severe loneliness, to actually find connection. I think that's the thing that's moving a lot of people. And so when I listen to what you're saying about the Manosphere, how people are being groomed for it, and again, not connected necessarily to this movie, but just indicative of, the loneliness that people are feeling. It sounds like what you are saying is that people are being driven there because they're looking for a community. And once they're there, they're maybe being groomed slowly with misogyny, with homophobic rhetoric, that it's not necessarily the way that people are grabbing the attention of these boys. They're grabbing them with the promise of community, of
Yeah, and I think there's like two layers to it too. Like if you watch the documentary, there's some of these influencers who are quite open about their grift, right? They're quite open about their exploitative. They don't care. It's just for the money. And then there's other ones who genuinely believe it and are thinking about, like, again, they're there for fitness and things like that, and they move into problematic areas. They're now role models without really sort of like building responsibly into that. But if you think about, like, in a lot of ways, like, the voices that, like, these young boys or young men who are online, we find that they listen to at least like one misogynistic voice online. So they're not seeking out these spaces saying like, hey, I hate women, I want to go and like engage in this space. But they're not bad people. It's just that these voices show up consistently and confidently at first. And again, not uniquely 100% problematic. And so that loneliness is really the on-ramp for people, right? Like, men are socialized to believe that they don't need anybody. That needing support is a sign of weakness, or is a feeling of weakness. So when we do feel isolated, we don't reach out to people. We go online, and especially now in like 2026 and beyond. And so the algorithm then does the rest for us in terms of connecting us with that pain point. And so as we mentioned before with those paper cuts, Bell Hooks quote is like, the first act of violence that the patriarchy demands of boys is not violence towards women, it's towards themselves. And so boys really learn early to shut down and those feelings and sort of button them in. And so that emotional suppression doesn't disappear, it goes somewhere. And the Manosphere gives it a direction for it to go. It gives it a place, it gives it a pathway. And so I think what the documentary does, at least from my perspective, is it really sort of shows, not intentionally, I think sort of accidentally, but it shows this like psychological codependency that exists. The influencers needs that constant validation that they need to like trigger. Like, we saw Harry constantly looking and seeing how the performance was going, and that catered to how he wanted to respond. But then the follower really needs certainty and direction. And so they really feed into each other in that space. And so one of the things that we do in terms of our conversation is acknowledge that most men are not like these like true diehard believers. Like, research from Equimundo goes through and identifies a large segment of men who are in this middle, if you'll call it that, consuming some of the content, not fully committed, but like they're still reachable. And like, this is where the intervention, the conversation matters the most, because it's the people sort of like flirting with it, who are looking for that meeting, who are looking for that community, who still have those pain points, where we have meaningful conversations about, okay, what does community look like? What does vulnerability look like? What does that mean to you? What's safe and authentic and meaningful? And that's really where the work and conversation is. It isn't battling out these problematic influencers. It's engaging the people who actually feed the influencers, the ones who follow them, and sort of create that space. So I've seen, sort of, Paul, about the rant, I've seen, some people come out and say, okay, like, the platforms need to kick them off, all these people off. And obviously the conversation around, like, the line in terms of like violent speech and hate speech and things like that aside, the conversation is like, someone else will just take that space. Someone else will jump up, someone else will feed in, and they may be more dangerous, they may not. But instead, I think the more responsible, meaningful conversation is, what is the unmet need that is driving people into these spaces and isolating themselves more, and really sort of filling that space? Yeah. And if that's where we can start to engage more, instead of saying, hey, just like, let's cut the broadcast, versus what is the challenge that we're navigating? How can we navigate and feel that unmet need? That is a radically different conversation, where we just sort of take the wind out of the sails out of these influencers and spaces.
Okay. So then, if somebody is concerned about a young man in their life right now, what should they do?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. One is like, don't panic, don't moralize it. Someone who walks in with like, that content's disgusting, how, like, shame on you for following it. You've really already confirmed the narrator's, the influencer's narrative of that adults don't get it. People will hate you for this, blah, 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 unpopular opinion, like out of the mainstream, things like that. But I think what's really easy for us to do is just get curious about what need is really being unmet. Like, if it's your kid, is your kid lonely? If it's a friend, are they struggling to find purpose? Are they feeling behind? Address that root, not the algorithm. And so we actually have an educators network with Next Gen Men, and it suggests asking, like, what did the person do? What values motivated it? What are the costs of these values? That's the conversation. It's not a lecture. So the lecture you lose, because the lecture requires people to choose a side and dig in and sort of defend their side and push, versus the conversation based around curiosity allows people to move their position, open up what's appealing to it. It keeps the relationship intact. So it's not like they don't get it. It's like they're trying to understand me. And that's really, really, really important. If it's for like friends, I think what I think the documentary really highlighted to us is that there's a lot of men out there trying to work through these views in real time. Right? Like, there's guys who are like really trying to, like, what does this mean to me? What's value to me? And all that. Like, there's a great window there in that uncertainty. And again, we're not debating the ideology that comes along with it. It's really about trying to unearth the pain underneath it. Like, you seem frustrated. What's actually going on? Those are much more effective intervention points than saying, wow, I can't believe you follow XYZ. Oh, you liked that post. Shame on you. Don't you know they think XYZ? Like, that may make us feel good in that moment, but it is not actually an effective tool of meeting people where they're at and providing them an off-ramp. Because if the only off-ramp is, one, I feel public shame and condemnation because I did XYZ, that all men framing, or I have to stick my head in the sand, put up the wall. One of those is much easier and safer for someone to take, where they say, like, I'm not doing anything wrong, you just don't get it. I go down the defensiveness and push further in and say, like, you're wrong and you just don't get it. Versus if we can provide the third off ramp, whereas the curiosity, so I like some of this, I don't like some of that. Maybe there's someone else, or like, oh yeah, like maybe I'm really frustrated because of XYZ. And so if we can start to paint that third road, that around curiosity, around like what's driving it, what's frustrating you. And everyone has a different pain point and frustration point. Some may be that their mental health. Someone may have been a tough relationship that they had with someone. Someone may be just they really feeling frustrated about what they're seeing in different news cycles or media cycles, or just how things are framed for them, whatever it may be. But allow people to navigate that and talk that through in an open way is the way for people to sort of, and I don't like the saying like de-radicalization or exit the pathway. It's just finding an honest, authentic way forward that is not driven by an influencer or even frankly you. It's finding a safe and authentic way forward for them.
Right. So it's kind of nurturing those spaces for for men, full stop. I think. To,
I would listen. I go into these spaces and have conversations. When someone says something, there's nothing more that I would love to do. Being like, tell me the stat. I have all the studies. I know the study you base that on. I know actually what that means, and I would love to get into it on that. That's not effective, because again, like that is making me feel better about like, oh well, I brought the education, I brought the smarts, I know what like they were wrong, blah 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 blah. But what's more effective is saying like, is this actually happening? Like, oh, you're angry about someone taking your job. You're angry about you no longer having a future. You're angry about whatever the scenario is. You're like, is that actually happening, or like, is that a fear you have? Okay, like, why is that? Why would that be a concern to you? Tell me more about that. That is a very different. That is a way more intensive process, way more emotional labor, way more time intensive to do that. But it is way more effective in meeting somewhere where they're at in a more strength-based way, and allowing them to sort of figure out, okay, are there other ways for me to navigate this unmet need and pain than just being exploited by potential areas? And even the way that I'm phrasing it right now is not how I would phrase it if I was talking to someone, saying like, you're being exploited, you just don't get it. That's also problematic framing. It's more about saying like, allowing them to sort of figure out what's real, authentic, like, safe for them in a way that's free from judgment or people with like trying to really put their fingers on the scale.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, obviously, you work with men all over, and you've seen a variety of conversations around this. What do you think people most misunderstand right now about young men, about boys?
I think the challenge that a lot of people see is like, you looked at the remember the Netflix show not documentary,
Adolescence? Yeah.
Adolescence. And so a lot of people came out of that and be like, oh my gosh, crisis point. And the UK had a response to it, and everyone was like, oh, we need to respond to it. And like, I found that, I mean, on one side, you're like, okay, that's really good. People are starting to think and talk about young men and boys a little bit differently. But the other one, it was like framing it again, as I said earlier, about like, how do we solve and prevent men and boys from being the violent problems that they can become? Instead of saying, what are the pains? And like, I think if you look at that example, aside the bigger context, I just use this because it's something that even if people have kids or don't have kids can sort of see, is this pain, the rejection, the isolation, the fear, the frustration that all existed within this really young boy. And I think that's really what a lot of people get wrong. They see potentially the output of like the misogyny that happens online. They see this manosphere and the output. They see what puts them through the algorithm. They potentially may see like numbers of different gender-based violence numbers, or like workplace harassment, or like all of these different areas. But what they sort of like miss is that this system is really harming men and boys too. So like, if you look at, we talk about the patriarchy in terms of, yes, absolutely is beneficial to men, and points of privilege in other ways. It's also incredibly damaging. Men are disproportionately impacted by suicide. Women attempt more, men die by suicide more. Men are disproportionately impacted by opioid overdoses and addiction. Men are disproportionately impacted by a lot of other like factors, homelessness and other areas. And so guys really know that like things aren't working for them right now. And I think one of the switches for us is to recognize that we have not necessarily been engaging absolutely a privileged group in terms of an overall like system and society, but one that is really, really struggling and experiencing a tremendous amount of pain and challenge right now. And that failure of actually like resourcing, engaging, challenging, supporting, also does lead to outcomes where people do drift into spaces where they are engaged, where they do find support, where they do find community, and that's really important. So I think the biggest thing that we're missing about men and boys right now is seeing the humanity of people who really want to be able to show vulnerability, but do not have the literacy or the permission to do so, that want to have those emotional bonds and supports, but have not been set up in a system where that really feels allowed or celebrated, or even that they know how to do that, that's safe to do that with other people, who want to engage about their mental health, but don't have the supports around it to do so effectively. And that's not even just saying, okay, we need more programs. It's also recognizing the barriers. Like, we have online resources for, let's say, mental health, open to everyone. Overwhelming majority of those calls and those online appeals are from non-masculine identifying youth. And because the norms that are still holding us back internally and socially still prevent us from reaching out and asking for that help. So a lot of it is not just saying, okay, we need those resources. We need to do a lot of deprogramming around what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a man, removing the barriers in that space, creating the safety for people to be able to get outside that narrow script that we've all been taught. And the challenge that we have is we've all been taught it. So you as a parent saying, okay, I want to remove these barriers. We're battling our own programming that we received and we continue to receive every day. So it's a tall task for a lot of us to be able to say, like, I want to do right. I want to take these barriers down. Well, we're also still navigating ourselves and rattling through those programming too. And so it's just being able to see it and acknowledge it, that we all do want this. It's just that we need to break through some of those speed bumps.
Oh gosh, you're so right as well. You're so right. It's within all of us, right? It's not just a problem for men to also solve. Women as well have to be part of this as well, and how we talk to men in our lives and boys in our lives. And it is very urgent right now. Very urgent.
And I just want to also say on there though too, because one of the things I hear, particularly when I go into workplaces as an example, and I think it's also really important, is the emotional labor of fixing men should not just fall on the shoulders of women, right? Like it's not up the job of women to navigate the challenges of a system that is marginalizing to them and challenging to them in a lot of ways. And then in addition to navigating that and having to fix equity challenges in the workplace, then in addition to say, okay, I also need to solve for men's mental health and psychological safety as well. But what it does say is that we collectively, all of us, no matter what other identities, have a role in challenging in the system and creating a system that is more inclusive, psychologically safe, and welcoming to all identities under that, all intersecting identities, but also like just if we're just thinking on the gender, that is like more inclusive for all genders, like whether you're male, female, non-conforming or whatever. Like I think we just need to take down the barriers on it, and it's a call for all of us in that. And so I hear this all the time in terms of like women in the workplace being like, yes, we need to do that, and then being like, well, but don't excuse the work for men. Like men also need to have these conversations. Men need to show up and showcase their own vulnerability to each other. Men need to check in and proactively engage. Men need to have the conversation with their sons and daughters too, but like have these conversations around what it looks like and feels like, what their values are, what their vulnerabilities, their fears, the frustration, the angers are. And so it's incumbent on all of us, no matter if we're parents, we're leaders in our organization, community, whatever, is recognizing what our role is and challenging some of these norms and then showing up for other people to create community.
It goes right back to community. As you said, community, belonging, right? And a lot of healing is going to happen in community. Mm-hmm. And I want to kind of end on maybe something that might be a little bit more hopeful, because it can be very easy to go down these rabbit holes that just seems like it's getting progressively worse. But since you do work in this space and you likely have some success stories that you can speak to as well too, right? I'd love to know, when you think about the next generation of boys and men, what gives you hope?
I am a few things. One, I'm super excited that people are having this conversation. And we're having it not just to say, again, how to solve the problem that is, but saying like, wow, we have some proactive things that we can do. And I'm excited about that because it's happening all over the place. It's happening in workplaces, it's happening in locker rooms, it's happening in like PTAs, it's happening all over the place. And so that's really exciting. And because there are a lot of different solutions and interventions that we can use. I'm excited that particularly in the Canadian context, that we are going to have a men and boys health strategy that the federal government is putting together and is going to be launching. And we're in the consult phase for that right now. And that matches up with the UK has one, Australia has one. So like that is exciting too. And that's really hopeful because we'll have some supports there. But I want to give you a quick example of a Next Gen Men thing that's unique to us that I think showcases what's super exciting. So Next Gen Men Alliance is a Discord-based community for boys or masculine identified youth aged like 12 and up, but it's for youth. And we did an evaluation survey last year, and it found a few different things. And this is really neat. So this is a Discord server for people who aren't familiar. It's an online space that's facilitated, and it's for masculine identified youth to go and push boundaries, challenge, have fun. They play e-games together. They do all these things, but it's an online community. It's safe. And we found that all the participants felt a sense of belonging within the community by participating in this. Most reported reduced stigma around mental health and improved willingness to support those with mental health challenges. We saw shifts in attitude around gender equity and greater confidence to challenge others on that conversation. And then one member even described reaching out through the server during a mental health challenge and crediting it with them being able to navigate it safely. So what that shows for me is online spaces can be really powerful and really, really healthy. And we think all the time about like, oh my gosh, 4chan or Reddit or all these other things that we hear in the news about how dangerous and harmful they are. But we also know that when we're intentional in creating some of these spaces, like this specific, the Discord server that we do right now, it is incredibly transformative and it's incredibly powerful and it's really, really well liked by people. And so I think this is really hopeful for me. It means that like so many of us are focused on creating these spaces more intentionally, no matter where it is, no matter what community is based in it, is that there is a lot of upside and a lot of really, 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 really strong outcomes that come out of these type of initiatives.
Oh, well, this is amazing. Congratulations as well right now on the work that's being done to actually get this to become a movement nationally and to get actual backing, funding, support for this, because I think it is really, it really is urgent. And I wanted to have you on because it is a big topic to tackle. I myself, see all the time conversations around men around the space. I really, really, really want to thank you for coming today. And if there is somebody who wants to connect with you to find out more about Next Gen Men, to find out how they can get involved or how they can bring you into their organization, how can they do that?
The easiest thing is on social, it's at NextGenMen, nextgenmen.ca, and you can choose if you want workplace, your schools, you just want to, if you're a parent, you just want to have the conversation. Those are the two easiest ones, and that will direct you to the Discord server. That will direct you to our resources for coaches. Okay. It'll direct you to everything there. So nextgenmen.ca or at nextgenmen on our socials.
Oh, okay. And you're going to be seeing it on here. Check it out. Get in touch with him. I want to thank you so much for coming today, Trevor, because as I said, I think this is a really urgent topic. I really want to encourage everyone to also think about it the way that you've kind of positioned it for us today, because my biggest takeaway from what you're saying today is that really honestly, this is not so much a conversation about the ideology in the manosphere and trying to, obliterate that kind of ideology. It's really about trying to welcome boys back into spaces where they can exhale, where they can belong, where they can find community. It's like they're being pushed out for a variety of reasons and finding community in some of these other spaces. So if we can bring them back and allow them to actually be in spaces that are nurturing the qualities that we want to see in Next Gen Men, this is probably going to be more effective than, as you said, lecturing at them.
Yeah, the thing I would just close with is like, if no one shows up for boys in their uncertainty, someone will, right? And that's not a bug in the system, that's the strategy. So we're not asking boys to become less, we're asking them to become more. And I think that's super exciting for any of the type of conversations we have, no matter where you're at in it, is really trying to engage and provide more so that they feel limitless.
Oh, thank you, Trevor.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna end it on that, and thank you so much for listening, for watching today. As I said, if you do want to get in touch with Trevor or any of the folks at Next Gen Men, be sure to look in the episode notes. And as always, alchemists, stay curious.